Dear friends, this day is all about exploring the past, being aware of the present, and look forward to the future European capitals of culture and other similar concepts from an indigenous point of view. Several cities in the Arctic region, including Umeå, Umeå, Bodø, Bovda, Bodø, Aulo, Uleåborg, and Giron, Kiruna, have either been or will be designated European capitals of culture, all with a strong emphasis on Sami culture. The significance of these cultural projects for the Sami people and our communities should be examined, particularly in terms of social, cultural, and financial development, democracy, and the impact on Sami arts and cultural workers. The goal of this summit today is to exchange experiences and critically examine the effects of the Sami involvement in non-indigenous-led, international, and large-scale cultural projects, and explore the implications on the Sami arts and culture field. To broaden our perspectives on these matters, we are going to start off with our special guests from Canada. Canada has been in a kind of post-truth and reconciliation report state for the last 8 years, and substantial structural changes have been implemented as a response to the report's findings, both within the national arts institutions and within the national funding systems. Canada was also the host of the Arctic Arts Summit in Yukon in 2022 and centered indigenous voices and perspectives in this 3-day-long international cultural policy workshop and summit. What are their experiences from the point of view of a national institution? After their presentation, we will have a panel discussion to further dive into these topics. But first, it is truly a great pleasure to introduce to you, jet-lagged or not, Michelle Lavallee, Oli Ejisiak. Michelle is the director, and Oli is the curatorial assistant of Indigenous Ways and Curatorial Initiatives at the National Gallery of Canada in Ottawa. And also Megan Lau from the Canadian Embassy to Sweden, here representing also Canada Council for the Arts, who co-hosted the Arctic Arts Summit in 2022. Dear guests, the floor is now all yours, if you have your microphones on and are ready. Welcome.
Yeah. Do your hair, so if you head bang.
I think I'll stand here for the first, and then I'll join you. Yeah, I went after, yeah.
Yeah.
Sifin?
Good.
All right. So, Ani Bojo, can you hear me all right? My throat's a little scratchy today, so I apologize for that. But Ani Bojo, Kiwetnkwen Indishnakas. That's my way of introducing myself in my native name. My English name is Michelle Lavallee. My original language that I should be able to speak is Anishinaabe-Moan. My family comes from Neheshingaming, Cape Croker, in what's now called Ontario, and and it's one of the unceded First Nations that exist in Canada. I am a mother, and I'm a curator and an arts administrator. And I'm very honored to be a guest here in the ancestral territory of the Sami peoples. And I would like to thank Mikael and Maya for inviting us to participate in today's discussion. And I thank you, Osa, and all the other cultural leaders who are here today for giving us some space to speak with you and to be in conversation. I feel very privileged to be here alongside colleagues, international colleagues and co-conspirators, and I want to pay my respects to the ancestors and the current inhabitants of the territories you all find yourselves within. I currently live and work between what's now called Gatineau and Ottawa in unceded Anishinaabe territory, and I think it's really important that we always acknowledge the original caretakers of the territories and those who are allowing us to be here today. And while it may only be a few words, it's very important for us to say. So this is what we might refer to as a land acknowledgement. And they've become pretty common within Canada, but I sometimes go back and forth about how they're being done and whether or not we should be doing this. But when it gets down to it, I do think it's very good and important that we continue to not just say it, but to take interest and be knowledgeable about and acknowledge the traditional custodians of a territory. And that would mean the nation or sometimes many nations who lived in the place before, but also those still living there now and those who are about to come. And it really is about recognizing how many diverse peoples live in these territories. In Canada, we have the three overarching Indigenous groups, First Nations, Inuit, and then later, after contact, came the Métis peoples. But these really should be positive, these traditional acknowledgements. They function as an invitation to new understandings of the connection between land, people, and history. And this is why I think it's important to not just say them, but to think about and to talk aloud about why we do this. Thinking about why you are saying it and what it means to you in both your personal lives, but also in our professional lives. What are the understandings and actions that we can carry forward from doing this? And it is especially important, I think, for leaders and cultural influencers and decision makers, those who carry the responsibilities of programming and hiring and budget allocations. And as an Anishinaabe, that's First Nations Ojibwe woman, I do think about this. What does it mean when I say it, and to who I'm saying it to, and why should I do this? And looking in the mirror, hugging my daughter, where I live and work is a daily reminder. And I take it very seriously, the responsibility to ensure it's not just a hollow performance, and that this and other things I say are actually informing the work that I do, and that my efforts can create something beyond myself, and hopefully contribute to any institution that I might have the privilege of being involved with. So while it might only be a few words, I do territorial acknowledgements, especially when I'm traveling in the small way that I currently can. It's a way of paying my respects. It's a way also for Indigenous peoples to claim space, whether it be virtual or otherwise, and space for the people who are here. Space for the people who are currently here sharing these territories, but also, importantly, to acknowledge those who came before. It's really about sovereignty. In Canada, we talk a lot about sovereignty. It's about an Indigenous way of being, and it's a way of honoring people's ceremonies and elders, those who give me voice and those who allow me to be here today. So I want to say Chimigwich to all the ancestors that we're bringing into the rooms with us today, and importantly for those who will come after. So Chimigwich, and allow my colleague to come up and speak. So thank you.
Buddhas, can you hear me okay? Yes? Okay. So Boris, and good morning. My name is Megan Lau, and I'm the Councillor for Political and Public Affairs at the Embassy of Canada to Sweden. I'd just like to thank briefly Michael, Maya, and all the others who were involved in facilitating Canada's participation here today. It is an absolute honour for Canada to be asked to be part of these discussions today, and I really appreciate all the energy that went into making that possible. So thank you very much, Michael, and I can't see Maya right now, but thank you to Maya too. And so I'm here today to speak on behalf of the Canada Council for the Arts in order to share their experience as an institution with you. They really wish that they were able to be here as well, and so I'll certainly be sharing the contents of today's discussions with them so that we can learn back in Canada at the Canada Council for the Arts as well from what is said here today. So what I'll speak about today first will be how the Canada Council for the Arts decided to build a new relationship with Indigenous peoples, as Maria mentioned earlier, and then, as part of that, a new funding model. And then I'd like to speak about the Canada Council for the Arts experience as the co-host of the Arctic Arts Summit, as Maria also mentioned, and share some of what we learned from that experience. I'm going to speak strictly from a Canadian institutional perspective, so I'm really pleased that both Uli and Michelle are here today, so they can speak from the perspective of a second Canadian institution, but also, of course, to present an Indigenous perspective. So first, I'll start with just a little bit of background, and please bear with me. Many of you may be well-versed in this, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. And so, as you may know, the Canada Council for the Arts is the main arts funder in Canada. Its mandate is to foster and promote the study and enjoyment of and the production of works in the arts. The Council is a Crown corporation, which is roughly the equivalent of an agency in Sweden. It operates in an arm's length relation from the government, which is important because it means that its priorities and its decisions are set and made independent of the government. The Council's role is to champion and invest in the artistic field through a broad range of grants, services, prizes, and payments to professional Canadian artists and arts organizations. Its work ensures that excellent, vibrant, and diverse art and literature engages Canadians, enriches their communities, and reaches markets around the world. And with that in mind, I'd also like to share a little bit of political context, which Maria also alluded to, but I'll provide just a little bit more detail. And so, as many of you know, the past few years have been a time of great change and transformation in Canada as a society and also throughout all of our institutions. This is because in June 2015, after 6 years of work, Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission released its final report. The report included 94 calls to action to redress the legacy of residential schools and advance the process of Canadian reconciliation with the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. In the wake of this, the Government of Canada started to address the complex and long-standing barriers to a true nation-to-nation relationship with Indigenous peoples. And so it was in response to some specific calls to action that the Canada Council embarked on a journey to think and act differently as a federal institution in its relationship with Indigenous people, artists, arts organizations, and communities. The intention for the Council was to start building a new relationship with Indigenous peoples that would be consistent with a strong commitment to truth, reconciliation, and decolonization, and to address anti-racism in the arts and wider society. As part of this, the Canada Council has committed itself to being a proactive agent of change in the ongoing dialogue of conciliation and reconciliation in Canada. More specifically, it's done this by fostering critical and creative conversations between departments, external partners, artists, and communities. And at the same time, and perhaps most importantly, it is set about changing the way that it works, to share authority and to work collaboratively. For instance, the Council has developed co-delivery models of funding with regional partners in the north of Canada. All of this has been done in the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and trust. And so the Council's commitments related to Indigenous peoples and culture are underpinned by 3 principles. First, the rights of Indigenous peoples, as established by the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Second, by the domestic rights in Canada of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. And third, by the Council's responsibilities as a federal institution in response to the calls to action of the Federal Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And so in this context, the Canada Council changed its model for funding Indigenous art and culture. This took place in 2016, when the Canada Council established Creating, Knowing, and Sharing the arts and cultures of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. The new funding program emphasizes cultural self-determination. As such, it goes beyond notions of designated funding for Indigenous peoples and into the sphere of what we hope is true transformative social engagement. I'm happy to share the other guiding principles that shape this, but I don't want to take up the time with that today. So if anyone is interested, please don't hesitate to reach out to me afterwards. I'd be happy to share that framing work that was done as this new program was developed. But what I can say here is that creating, knowing, and sharing has 4 distinguishing features that I think are relevant for the conversations today. First is that the program is comprehensive to respect Indigenous artistic and cultural traditions and contemporary dynamics. Second, that it embraces notions of cultural sovereignty, and this is to recognize an art historical and aesthetic continuity centered in Indigenous knowledges and practices. Third, it supports Indigenous self-determination. The program has been developed by and is staffed by Indigenous people. And fourth and finally, it is appropriately resourced. As often in the past, initiatives regarding Indigenous peoples had been underfunded and short-term in nature. The changes also extend to the leadership at the Canada Council. And so I'd note that in 2020, Jesse Wendt was the first Indigenous person ever to be appointed as chair of the board of the Canada Council. His approach to the role is to help the organization connect to the community, to find ways to do less harm, and to make further progress in the decolonization of the institution. And so as part of this transformation in recent years, the Council has also sought to play a role internationally to foster and advance Indigenous ways and worldviews. This led, for instance, to multi-year agreements to deliver Indigenous-led reciprocal exchanges and to promote creative collaborations. It has also entailed research projects to improve peer assessment processes. This was done in cooperation with the Sami Council and the Norwegian Arts Council, as there may be many people in the audience here today who can speak about this process further. But what I'd like to turn to now is 2022, when the Canada Council co-presented with the Government of Yukon the 3rd Arctic Arts Summit in Whitehorse, Yukon. And so to sketch in a little bit of background, although looking around the room, I see a number of people who actually were in attendance, so hopefully they'll also share their perspectives as the day goes on. So the summit brought together 240 representatives of Arctic countries and the Indigenous nations of the circumpolar region, with an aim to strengthen arts and culture in the north and to develop circumpolar cooperation to stimulate collaboration in arts and creative industries. Nearly half of the delegates were international guests, including many representatives from Sápmi who are here today. They came to the summit to attend, to speak, or to perform. The 2022 Arctic Arts Summit represents a key milestone for the Canada Council toward the definition and implementation of its strategic framework to support arts and culture development in, for, and by the North. The Arctic Arts Summit provided an opportunity to strengthen the Council's presence and its relationships in the North, and it reflected the Council's role as a national arts funder with a responsibility to respond meaningfully to the needs of arts communities, regardless of where they are located. And so, as an aside, in the Swedish context, I know, for instance, that the Canada Council is really interested in the work that Riksteatern has done, which is done in a very similar spirit and with a similar focus on disparate geographies. And so, I'll speak now about the approach to the Arctic Arts Summit and hope to help frame some of the conversations today. And so the Canada Council from the outset wanted its approach to the Arctic Arts Summit to reflect the Council's recognition of Indigenous self-determination and sovereignty, and its commitment to advance a decolonized future for the arts. And so what this meant in practice was that Indigenous leaders led on the programming of the summit in partnership and collaboration with several Indigenous and non-Indigenous organizations. And from this experience, the Canada Council drew a number of lessons, which I can share with you today. First, as an institution, they found that it was important to be consistent in acting as an enabler rather than a prescriptive decision maker. Second, it was important to include, consistently, diverse voices, especially Indigenous ones, and to let them take the lead. Third, it was important not to pre-impose a governance model from the start, but rather to develop this through discussions with partners, and to include strong Indigenous leadership in the governance model. For the Canada Council, there was tremendous benefit in co-hosting the Arctic Arts Summit. The Canada Council gained a more nuanced understanding of the current and potential contributions of arts and culture to the economic and social development of the North, and the Council also came to appreciate the amplified role which the Council could play as a funder, partner, facilitator, and advocate, both domestically and internationally. And so that is the institutional perspective on the Arctic Arts Summit. But I hope that my Canadian colleagues who are also here today and others will also be able to speak to the benefits that were reaped by the Indigenous participants and by the local communities. And so just to wrap up, what I'd like to say today is to emphasize that Canada's experience has been that cultural institutions such as art funders can play a crucial and a proactive role in response to the work of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. In Canada, this took the form of re-examining the Canada Council's foundational makeup and taking the decision to be an enabler of change. And what followed from this included the creation of a new funding program and a large-scale project, the Arctic Arts Summit, in which the Canada Council sought to share and or give back power to Indigenous leaders and genuinely embrace a transformation that would contribute to a decolonized future for the arts sectors and for society at large. Thanks so much for listening to me today, and I'd be happy to take questions afterwards.
All right, so I'm going to sit over here and talk, if that's okay with you. So just to continue the conversation before my colleague Uli has an opportunity to also speak as well, I thought I wasn't quite sure what to talk about today. There's so much to talk about and so many exciting things that I'm learning here and that I've learned throughout my career as a curator, as an arts administrator. But I thought I could start by sharing, it's not exactly a talk, it's more of a statement that we gave to our board at the National Gallery of Canada. So my began, over 20 or so years ago, and I made a conscious decision to step away from curatorial and enter Indigenous arts administration at management level. So, I began as a curator, but then moved over, and for about 5 years, I was director of a very important contemporary Indigenous art collection called the Indigenous Art Collection at the Indigenous Arts Centre under Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada. And from there, I was asked to move over to the National Gallery of Canada as they were developing a new department, a very seminal department, and it's historical. So myself and Stephen Loft, who was involved with Canada Council previously as part of Creative Knowing and Sharing, and many of you may have met him before. He's participated in the Art Summit and many other talks. But the gallery created the new department, Indigenous Ways and Decolonization. And so I moved over there to be the director of the department. The Indigenous curators, there's always been, not always, but for almost 20 years, there was an Indigenous curator or two hired at the National Gallery of Canada. But with the formation of the new department, the Indigenous curatorial department now falls under my purview. So part of my job is leading Indigenous curatorial initiatives at the National Gallery of Canada. The other part of my job is sitting on and working with senior management to look at policies and processes and to ensure Indigenous perspectives and views are incorporated in all the work we do, and working with all my other directorial colleagues at the institution to advise, but also help them advance the work that they're doing, but also in consideration of Indigenous peoples and the concept of the first art of Canada really is that by Indigenous peoples, and we need to start from that point. That's the beginning of that story, but then also recognizing many people have also come and now call Canada home. So how do we ensure those voices and those stories are also reflected in what is now called Canada? So I'm going to read, because I'm a much better reader than talking off the top of my head, I think, but this is what we told the board. So with the establishment of the new Indigenous Ways and Decolonization Department, the gallery has taken a bold step in realizing its commitment to center Indigenous ways of knowing and being in all that we do. Through these commitments, we have embarked on a course of decolonization that charts a way forward in building a new relationship with the Indigenous peoples of this land. A relationship that acknowledges our responsibility as a Crown corporation to uphold the treaty, inherent and constitutional rights of First Peoples of the land we now know as Canada. This means fundamentally reconstructing our institutional and organizational foundations in anti-colonial, anti-racist contexts. In Canada, we live in a nation-state that has worked to eliminate Indigenous governments, ignore and abuse Indigenous inherent rights, terminate treaties, and, through a process of assimilation, erasure, violence, and racist practices, attempted to cause Indigenous peoples of this land to cease to exist. Decolonization is a complex and nuanced concept. It encompasses the totality of our entire society and the multitude of systems that support it. It is the conscious unbinding of ourselves from colonial molds of thought, which are racist, anti-Indigenous, and oppressive. Very broadly, decolonization is a process of critically examining and systematically dismantling the structures, the power structures of society that have marginalized, oppressed, excluded, and killed Indigenous and other racialized people on the land we currently know as Canada. And on this land specifically, it is linked inextricably to Indigenous sovereignty. And that means understanding that Indigenous people have the right to control their lands, bodies, languages, and cultures. As stated in UNDRIP, Indigenous peoples have the right to maintain, control, protect, and develop their cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, and traditional cultural expressions, as well as the manifestations of their sciences, technologies, and cultures, including human and genetic resources, seeds, medicines, knowledge of the properties of flora and fauna, oral traditions, literatures, designs, sports, and traditional games, and visual and performing arts. They also have the right to maintain, control, protect, and develop their intellectual property over such cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, and traditional cultural expressions. In conjunction with Indigenous peoples, states shall take effective measures to recognize and protect the exercise of these rights. So we often at the gallery, Steve, myself, and the rest of the team and senior management look to the United Nations Declaration of the Rights on Indigenous Peoples alongside the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations that Megan mentioned. But we also talk a lot about decolonization. I'm not even sure if I love that word. You know, there's a lot of words that are being used in Canada, like reconciliation, decolonization, indigenization, and there's a lot of debate over, you know, what those words mean, how we engage them, but also how, at times, they often become weaponized and used against us to kind of subvert what we see as positive ways forward. But decolonization really is unsettling, literally. It rejects the settler colonial narratives that forms the basis of systems of power that we have for too long taken for granted or had ingrained on us from an early age. So what we must do is question and critically examine the fundamental systems the gallery is framed on and within, and reframe them on a vastly different set of principles. It's a journey, it's not a destination. And so, together with my colleagues, we've begun a journey of decolonization that charts a way forward in building new relationship between the peoples that now share this land. It's not a nation building in the outdated and outmoded parlance of the past, but it's more about a society building. And in the case of a Canadian federal institution such as the National Gallery, change can be daunting. It requires not only a vision and will, but an ability to share authority and agency not rooted in Western conceptualizations of power and control. So in the coming, months and what we've been doing it's been about 2 years since the department was created, we've been adding capacity to the team and framing a roadmap for decolonization for moving forward. And so this really, as I think I mentioned, will include an audit of all the gallery's policies and processes and new public engagement strategies to build our audiences and establish true nation-to-nation relationships with the First Peoples of the lands. We also ended our little talk to the board with a quote by Senator and former chairman of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, Murray St. Clair, who said, "You have to believe that doing something about this history is the right thing to do, and you have to be fearless in doing what you can. This is not a time for the timid, it is a time for the daring, and I invite you to join me in this challenge. I invite you to move forward and let us dare greatly together." So that's what we presented to the board. As you can imagine, it gets received with a bit of mixed reviews, but I think ultimately people are learning that our intent is to create these sovereign spaces to allow to regain some control over the presentation of Indigenous artists by Indigenous peoples, to ensure that those viewpoints are respected, but also to share and work alongside our colleagues to develop how do we want to move forward together. How do we recognize all the nations that now call Canada home without displacing Indigenous peoples? How do we honor all of our ancestors in doing that to build a better future for future generations? So that, in a nutshell, it's a small job, a few things to do while we're there. I don't know if decolonization is possible. I don't know what a decolonial or decolonized institution looks like. So yeah, there's no template for what we're doing. It's the first time that I'm aware of, especially in Canada, to have 2 Indigenous people as part of senior management at a major national institution. The one thing we do know is there are things we can do to be better. There are things we can do to behave better amongst one another, to respectfully listen to one another, to respectfully disagree with one another, but you know, find these collaborative ways of working and you know, conciliatory conversations towards developing the best way forward together. So I think, conscious of time, I'll end it there. I apologize if I went a little longer than I should have, but I want to make sure my colleague Uli has an opportunity to share as well. So Chimigwich for listening.
Mikael. Okay. I feel like a pop star with this headset. I'll just wait until the PowerPoint is up, if that's okay. This one. Oh, yeah. Okay. A little bit nervous. Perfect. Yes, thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to start off by saying I'm really grateful to be here in beautiful Sapmi. It's my first time here, and my first time traveling overseas out of Canada for over 10 years. The last time I came, I've left Canada was over 10 years ago when I went to Ireland. So yeah, really grateful to be here, and thank you especially to Mikael and Maya for hosting Michelle and I, and to all of the people I've met so far. It's been a pleasure speaking with you and meeting you all. Yeah. My name is Ulrika Yitiak. I'm an Inuk. I was born in Iqaluit, Nunavut, and raised outside of the north in Treaty 7 territory, or Alberta. And that's where I did my undergraduate degree in Indigenous Studies. I graduated in 2019. And I'm currently living in unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin lands, otherwise known as Ottawa, Canada. And I recently just joined the team as curatorial assistant at the National Gallery of Canada in the IWD department under Michelle's lead and Stephen Loft. And I'm also a writer, I'm an eldest sister, and an emerging curator. So as someone who has just recently started my career, I was thinking about what I could contribute, what I wanted to talk about today, and I was lucky enough to absorb some really important conversations over the past couple of days, mostly about our experiences as Indigenous people within institutions. So I thought I could contribute by speaking about what's been resonating with me over the past few days after meeting with a lot of you. Yeah. So recently, I guest curated an exhibition called Mute at the Mitchell Art Gallery in Edmonton, Alberta. That's what's on the screen here. And this included work by 5 contemporary Inuit artists who are all living outside of our homelands, so outside of Inuit Nunangat. One of the works in this exhibition is by Kablusiak, who is an Inuvialuk artist who just won the 2023 Sobey Art Award in Canada. And their artwork in Mute is a wool felt wall hanging, and I don't have a photo of it, but it's called Going to the Grocery Store. And in it are 2 Inuvialuk getting food, and when I saw it, I immediately thought, it immediately reminded me of a work that we have in the National Gallery collection titled Cape Dorset Freezer by Annie Putuguk. And I would consider Cape Dorset Freezer to be an iconic Inuit artwork in Inuit art history. So growing up, I remember seeing an image of it and thinking it really defied notions or expectations of what Inuit art should or could be. From the Southern gaze, which is something that Kablusiak in Mute also challenges through their work. So this is Cape Dorset Freezer by Annie Putuguk. Side note, I also think that there's something to be said about the outsider gaze when it comes to art, in that non-Indigenous people will often be open to consuming our visual arts and cultures, but won't support our overall liberation from violent structures. Anyways, I'm getting to the point. You can see the drawing there of families shopping in a really familiar scene to most of us. But what I want to talk about is how this artwork and Indigenous artwork on national and international levels open conversations about broader cultural policy, which is what we're all here for today. So through Annie's drawing, we're able to talk about traditional and contemporary foodways, connection to land and water, knowledge systems related to migrations and weather, and also issues like food insecurity and access to healthy and affordable food in the North. So this artwork reflects a certain material reality, and in turn could lead to changing those for the better. At least I like to believe that, and that's why I got into the arts. I want my younger siblings living in the South to taste tuktu and matak for the first time, and I want Northerners to be able to afford groceries and youth to learn how to hunt. And this is why I love this artwork, and I hope to see it in person eventually. I haven't yet. So this leads me to some positive news coming out of Canada recently. In January, actually on the same day that Mute opened, the exhibition I guest curated, the Canadian government and Nunavut signed the Nunavut Lands and Resources Devolution Agreement, which is dubbed as the largest land transfer in Canadian history. So this transfers decision-making power back into the hands of Inuit over land, water, and resources. And that's, I believe, 2 million square miles of land and water. And this is happening 25 years after Nunavut became a territory through our land claim. I bring this up to show how action like this can be taken. There are roadmaps that work, and that work is being done, and that's happening from local to international levels. Yeah. Also addresses some action points in UNDRIP. Okay, and the last thing I'll share is how, just like I was saying, the conversations that we've been having. The last thing I'll share is that we as Indigenous people are experts in international policy as we constantly navigate structures and systems and institutions that are not of our own making. Even on an individual level, I was born in Nunavut, but I grew up in Blackfoot territory. I would consider this living internationally despite it being in the same overall colonial state. Imposed borders aren't reflective of Indigenous relationships to place and land. What I appreciate most about how Indigenous people approach international policy, for the most part, is the embedded kinship that we garner between each other, whether that's at the UN or here in Sapmi or the Inuit Circumpolar Council or the Arctic Art Summit. Our values and relationships are the center rather than extraction and power. And I just want to end this off by saying that the work everyone doing here is building movements. And while I was born in the North and didn't grow up there, I hope to be a worthy advocate. And I really appreciate this time to connect with other circumpolar Indigenous people as an Inuk. And while we come from different contexts, there are so many parallels that we can look to in each other. And I really believe our policies and our ways of being are one of the only paths forward for a livable future. So Nakumik, thank you for listening. Thank you.
You're done? Thank you so much. Thank you. And you are free to find your seats again. Thank you so much, Uli, Michelle, and Megan, for this presentation. It's extremely interesting and it's extremely important. I can actually not underline enough how important the collaboration with Canada has been in a Sami perspective, in an international perspective. And as you have noticed, probably, they are, if not a light year ahead of us, quite far ahead of us. And also, friends, just notice this little but fundamental and extremely important thing, the fact that the National Gallery of Canada actually have Indigenous curatorial personnel. The National Gallery in Norway, you know, if that happens in my lifetime, it would be great. I don't know about the Moderna Museet or the big national museums in Stockholm, but I cannot imagine that they have Indigenous curatorial personnel. Anyway, thank you again, and looking forward to also hearing more from you during this day. It's so important to us that you are here.